Let's bring you another story now. The ANC's National Working Committee has reconfigured its leadership structures in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. It has brought in the elders in the form of Amos Masondo, Jeff Radebe, to lead these two provinces. People like Hope Papo and Mike Mabuyakhulu will be coordinators in Gauteng and in KZN, respectively. Qaanitah Hunter is our senior politics reporter. She joins us now to give us a little bit more meat. First, let's start with whether or not there is indeed going to be some kind of briefing to the media. There were intimations of that. Who is going to conduct that briefing and when might it come?
I think it was a very important decision made quite late last night, and so the ANC and Lutuli House has to first communicate this message to its structures. We know that ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula will have to virtually meet with the PECs of Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal first, communicate it to them, and they also have to come up with a way to communicate this message to the broader structures, and then this would be formally, communicated to the media and to the public. We had asked at Lutuli House when an outcome of the NWC meeting would be communicated. They said in due course. Obviously, we know with decisions like this, with sensitive decisions like this, they have to follow process, and that would be taking the provincial executives that are essentially dissolved or reconfigured, rather, into their confidence and explain the justification for the moves.
As you put it, it is a sensitive matter, particularly to the affected provinces and indeed the leaders of these two provinces. It's the first time that we are hearing of a reconfiguration of leadership structures, because what usually happens is that if a leader is taken off or for some reason is no longer capacitated to lead, there would normally be a conference that is convened in order to replace that leader constitutionally. But this is the first in the ANC. We know about dissolutions, we know about disbandments, the reconfiguration. Are we hearing any murmurs of the fallout?
Yeah. So let's talk about, how do they get to this point? The first thing is that the ANC in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal performed dismally. And in the diagnosis of who should be held responsible for the electoral performance, the ANC declined from 50% to 34% in Gauteng and from 54% to something like 16%, 16.9% in KwaZulu-Natal. Dismal election performance in the 2024 elections. That was 8 or 9 months ago. There had to be some conversation around consequences. Who should be held responsible? And in those discussions, the National Executive Committee earlier in the year already decided that there's no good in just kind of sort of overhauling the leadership. It doesn't actually bring any concrete results. Yeah. We've seen it before in provinces like the Northwest, where the ANC would disband a leadership structure and then it would limp, and the organization suffers as a result. So this seems to be the best of both worlds. There's some consequence management in that there's demotions, if you like. Panyazi Lesufi is no longer the leader of the ANC in Gauteng in this new iteration. Sibonisa Duma is not the leadership of the leader or the provincial chairperson of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, but they're still within the leadership structure with these adults in the room, as many call it, called in now, who almost have an objective role to play with no leadership ambitions themselves. People like Amos Masondo and Jeff Radebe and Mike Mabuyakhulu and Hope Papo to lead the province to rebuild, number one, and then to eventually have an elective conference. Remember, there's a time ticking here, Koli, because at the end of the day, local government elections is within 18 months, less than 18 months. And so they need to get the house in order in these provinces. And the only way to do that is to successfully rebuild structures, as the ANC has conceded that there's nothing left of the party in these provinces somewhat.
Here's a question. How weighty is the stature of these individuals? Let's say, number one, within the ANC structures, are they people who carry the necessary respect and, by extension, to members of the public simply put, is this going to endear the ANC to the public, the voting public, that is?
Yeah, I think they're not really concerned about the public right now. I think it's about restoring order in-house. And so there was sort of three main priorities. The first is, how do you get people who have the respect from all warring factions within the ANC? People who are a little bit at a distance and people who command some respect.
Yeah.
Right, Amos, Masondo is an old guy, person, you know, with probably no ambitions to ever become a provincial chairperson of the ANC, right? But at the same time, they had to choose people who had links to these provinces, come from these provinces, understand the dynamics of these provinces, because if you parachute people from outside, as was done before in the ANC, it never works out really well. The third element is, how do you then deal with a very important arm of the restructuring, which is the position of a coordinator, which is your essential interim provincial secretary. Remember, that's the engine of the party, and that's where the failures were identified in Gauteng and in KwaZulu-Natal. And so that is where the party had to, you know, kind of push and pull for many weeks now over the names and the reconfiguration of bringing warring sides together, bringing old leaders in, leaving and retaining some of the existing leaders in new positions. But also, Xoli, not to underscore the fact that this comes within an environment of political, factional dancing, if you like, and that realization that there's a NGC that's coming up this year. There's a midterm review for the ANC, and it's important, you know, for ANC factions to start coalescing together. And so this neutralizes things with Cyril Ramaphosa for people to mobilize against him.
Interesting dynamics indeed, and we're going to have to see how these reconfigured structures are going to work together with the elders in the room, as you put it. It's a space that we are going to be watching very closely, and as and when Luthuli House pronounces on when it is that they might make the official communication, we'll be the first to let you know.